everyone. Sorry for the delay. Let me bring this up on Facebook, make sure we're all good to go. Sometimes Facebook.
Facebook Live. How privilege. Are you enjoying it?
Say it one more time. You cut out on us there.
I said, how does it feel to be able to go live on Facebook? How's that privilege? Are you enjoying it?
That's right. Let's talk all about your experience with the Facebook awesomeness. Here, let me refresh here. I'm not ignoring you. I'm trying to get the screen all set up properly. There we go. We're good to go. Okay, cool. Yeah. So what happened with that whole? Your page got like hacked or taken over, and now you've just lost like hundreds of thousands of. And right now, for those that don't know, we're having a little bit of audio problem with Lauren. Had to log in via her phone for some reason, so it's doing this thing where if I talk, she can't talk. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a little bit of a pause in between us talking. So tell us what happened, Miss Lauren.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of when you're actually like live on television and you're coming in remote and you have to give it that pause to buffer. So I guess it's not too unlike that. But yes, my Facebook page was hacked and it seems like there is a huge amount. Sorry about that. Issues with coming in from a phone. Am I paused? Hold on. I'm so sorry. Uh, okay. Am I back? Okay, now I can't hear you. Hold on. Now the audio's out for me. Hold on. Let me come back.
Oh, I had my. Let's try it again. No noises come out. Thank you, Ashley. We'll get this straightened out. She's going to go out and come back in. Here we go. All right, let's try this again. Let me bring you up here. Video source, Lauren. Boom. We're good.
I'm on D&D.
All right, let's start over and take two. All right, we are back, folks. Ralph from Dad Starting Over and Help from In, and Lauren the Advocate live with complete with technical difficulties and the whole thing. All right, here we go. Boomer Tech Hour says unconstructed Carl. Now, okay, yeah, we should be all good to go, folks. Let's hope, right? All right, so back to Lauren. What happened with your Facebook page? Because you got hacked and wiped out, and you used to have like 300 plus thousand followers, and now it's like a few thousand. So what's going on there?
I know it was so crazy, like 3 years, and then one day hanging out, and I get an email, and someone goes, "Hey, your Facebook's been hacked," and I'm like, "What?" And I go to log in, and sure as shit, that's exactly what had happened. I couldn't sign in. It was no longer in my pages. It wasn't in my business manager. And like my heart just sinks. But at the same time, I'm a very like reasonable person. So I have been prepared from the beginning for something like this to happen at any given time. Like maybe someone like reports my page and it gets taken down or something like that. I once got banned on TikTok for 15 minutes. So they restored it as soon as I, but it could, but I have been trying to get it back. I went and got meta verified on the personal page that the page was tied to because I can still see parts of it, and I thought it would be pretty easy to show and prove like this is 100% my page. I have all of the evidence that you could possibly need. And at first they were like, yeah, well, we see that you've been hacked. We see that you're the rightful owner. We're going to go ahead and delete all the stuff that they've been adding. We're going to clean it up. We're going to give it back to you in 2 weeks' time. And I'm like, amazing. I'm so glad that I'm paying $15 a month to get this blue check mark and this phenomenal support. And then a week later, they're like, actually, we're not going to do that. You have to fill out this form and then we can maybe start doing that. So I fill out the form And then they're like, just kidding, we're actually not going to help you. But if you pay for our advertisement, maybe it'll help your new page.
No way. What a wow. Here we are on Facebook totally bad mouthing them, but what a bunch of dickheads. Jesus.
But here's the funny is whoever these hackers are, they're still shit posting every day. They've just got this like formula of AI generated like saucy topics, but they've never unlinked me from the payout method. So they're not making a ton of money, but like a good 300 or so dollars a month is still being deposited into
And
my,
you're getting it. You're getting the 300 bucks.
yeah, dumbest hackers ever.
Wow, that's awesome. Now something similar happened to me where I was in Germany and I stupidly got on a public Wi-Fi spot. Stupid me on my laptop that it was connected to everything, and they got in and they got into my Facebook account. They got into my advertising account. They racked up like $12,000 on a credit card that I had, and I was like, "What the heck is going on?" And I knew something was up because I woke up first thing in the morning and I saw an email said, somebody went ahead and changed your Facebook password. If this wasn't you, click here. It's like, not me. And like, okay, give us some proof that you are who you are. And I went through that and they're like, no, sorry, it doesn't work. I'm like, what the heck's going on here? It took forever, but I finally got it back, finally got my money back. That took like a month, maybe 2 months to get my money back and everything else. But what saved me was I had two personal accounts, both the same name, both verified and all the other stuff. But one was taken over. I was able to use the other one, get in through the back door, shut them out, shut it down, yada yada. It was just a matter of getting my money back, and then I had got the two-step, authentication set up and all this other stuff. And then I went to go get Meta verified with Dad starting over, and they said, give proof of your ownership of the company. Well, my corporate name is REB Enterprises, and I have help from men, Dad starting over. Like, no, it's not Dad starting over. Well, I'm doing business as Dad starting over. Here's the form. No, not good enough. So they're a pain in the butt. Facebook is a pain in the butt to deal with. They're too big, obviously. You trying to get somebody on the horn to get something settled. It's Google, from what I understand, is pretty much the same. Getting something on YouTube fixed or whatever. It's like, forget about it. So, but you're still in business, so to speak. It's just at 1/100th of the audience size.
So happy that like so many people have like come over to find the page, like I think it's been like a month since I made it and we're already at like over 5,500. So it takes a lot of people like, many months, maybe even over a year to get anywhere near that amount. So I'm still happy. I'm still going to keep posting.
And you're still very active on YouTube, TikTok. Are you? I'm messing with my mute here because every time I talk, you get cut off. So for those just joining us, we're having some audio difficulties. It's almost like, I don't know if it's like a CB or what, where I talk and then I have to pause a little bit and then she could talk. So if you see she's muted a little bit, it's not me. It's whatever's going on here with the interwebs. But anywho, are you Twitter or X? You're on there as well. Like, if you want to give us all your handles so we make sure we follow you.
Yeah, I'm also on Instagram, but actually, no, I'm not a Twitter gal. I joined Threads. So I'm actually a threader.
That doesn't have a good ring to it, does it? Threader. It doesn't. No, I tried that out for like a week, I think, and then just forgot about it. I think me and a bunch of other people did the same thing, but I haven't made any headway on Twitter or X. Basically, it's TikTok and Facebook is the two. Well, YouTube's doing pretty well right now. It could be better. I haven't really made any money on YouTube yet. I've got like 130 some thousand subscribers, but I'm not making any. No bank really. Yeah, I don't know.
I'm surprised
I make
everyone.
making some Facebook pays like shoot 10 times more than what YouTube does as far as the money I'm making on it. So just my audience. I don't know. Maybe one of these days YouTube will kick in. Is YouTube your money maker for you? Well, now with the Facebook doing what it's doing and everything else.
I would say so. Definitely where I have the biggest audience and where I really initially blew up. But then a lot of other TikTok creators were like, you have to move over to YouTube. Like, you need to get on YouTube. And I almost got like peer pressured into it, but I'm glad that I did because my experience is that YouTube pays the absolute best. per view, TikTok is now a very close comparison to that pay. Facebook, definitely Facebook, I would say does very well. RIP though, I know more monetization for me, except for whatever them hackers want to. Oh, we'll get not all about the money anyway.
But enough about the wonderful world of the content creators. And for those that are wondering, when we say we get paid, there's different ways of getting paid through this. Like Facebook, for example, literally pays us. Like there's this whole other program called bonus program where the more you post and the more people interact and the farther reach you get a few pennies back to you every time, and it can add up. And then there's advertising dollars and people click ads on your videos and so forth. And then if you have your own products and so forth that get, people see it and click on it and buy. So you can make a living doing this kind of stuff, but there's a lot of people getting burned out on it. You've seen a lot of YouTubers that are leaving because they just realize it's constant, 7 days a week, 365, constantly churning. Then you have to get a team of people to help you edit and post, and it costs so much money. And there's like, and it's mostly young people, and they're relatively new to this business world, and it's too much for them, and it can be overwhelming, really, really quick. And I've had to take some breaks on this. It's too much, especially if you are interacting with comments. If you get on there and get into the comments and reply to them and answer back and so forth, next thing you know, an hour has passed on your phone and you're just sitting on the couch doing nothing. It's like, this is ridiculous. I could be doing something else. And that if you're a sensitive person like myself, admittedly kind of a sensitive, anxious person, taking in all that info day in and day out, it's too much. And it just gets to you and you get anxious and you can slip into depression and other stuff. I haven't been there yet, but from what I've heard from other people, it's really, really tough on them. So it's not a fun world, 100% of the time, but we're pretty lucky to do what we do. I mean, let's be honest. And
That's the part is whatever hardships you might experience as a content creator, you don't get to complain about them because you're living as a content creator. It's like I don't feel like I have any right to like really complain about what goes on in my life because literally I've built an audience of people who are going through like 10 times worse. So it's like sometimes I'm like, oh, there are difficult aspects to this, and then I have to like humble myself. Like you are literally like your job is sitting with your cats and your dogs and talking to people and doing what you love. So
while wearing your jammy pants, which I am right now as we speak. So yeah, it's really tough.
appointments. That's another thing though, is as a content creator, like, I unfortunately have some surgeries coming up in my life. Gonna be hard to film, once I have a bunch of surgeries. So you gotta like start preparing content ahead of time.
Yeah, that's where I'm a little lucky in that this is a small portion of my business because we have the for those that don't know, go to helpformen.com, and we have a private portion of our group, a private men's group. Guys get on there and talk and forums and live Zoom meetings, and we have the one-on-one coaching. We get together in person. We have over 800 hours of audio content available to our members. So that's a portion of my income, is I get a piece of every one of those membership fees, as well as the guys on our team do too. And then we have the coaching as well. And then we have courses, book sales that's how I started all this. So you have to have all these little pieces all together to make a living at this. The average person does. You can't just say, I'm going to create a YouTube account and that's it. Some people can do that. Even like your Mr. Beast types. He didn't just stop at YouTube, which is making him bazillions of dollars. He also has his products and candy and other nonsense and stuff and multiple channels, and it's this whole enterprise. But anywho, for those that don't know, we haven't really given a proper introduction. Lauren the Dadvocate, if you haven't seen her, well then you're not in this whole relationship sphere from a man's perspective because her face is everywhere. It's on Facebook, it's on TikTok. TikTok is how I found you, YouTube, Instagram, Threads, and then myself, Dad Starting Over. I've been creating content under the name of Dad Starting Over for years now. We have, years ago, I wrote a book that took off, and that's what got most of the people to find me and follow me. And that book was called The Dead Bedroom Fix. It's all about sex and marriage. The third edition of that book just came out last month. Is that right? No, month before last, July of 2024. And After that, we kind of branched out and made a more broad brand called Help for Men at helpformen.com. We got myself and a team of guys, and we help men from all over the world. We have, if you want to go check out the website, helpformen.com, we got articles, we got videos, all for free. And if you want to join our private group, that's where a lot of the work is done, a lot of one-on-one work and work with guys from all over the world. Thanks, by the way, for you guys for liking this. If you could like and share this, I appreciate it. And if you see Lauren the Dadvocate, give her a follow on Facebook. Let's get those numbers back up to your previous high of 300 some thousand, 500 some thousand.
370,000.
Wow. And that all went poof. And now we're back up to 5,500. So we're getting there, slowly but surely. And for those just joining us wondering what's going on with the audio, we got a weird thing where it's basically like only one of us can talk at a time, so we're not talking over each other. So I'm not purposely muting Lauren or anything. It's just how it's going here. So we will open this up to questions. I assume if most of you are watching this, you know who we are, you know what we do. So if you have any questions at all or any comments or stories or anything based on any content that you've watched recently from us, some videos, articles, whatever it may be. We're both putting out a lot of videos, so maybe something has sparked something that you want to talk about. Now's the time to ask in the comments here. I'm going to scroll down here. Andrew from Facebook says he's got to go to work, but you two are awesome and have helped keep me motivated after my parentheses now ex-wife's affair. Ooh, ouch. Sorry about that, Andrew, but I'm glad you're following us. Thank you. Sorry you're going through that. All right, here we go. Jeff asks from Facebook, can you guys comment on the transition of new boyfriend to new stepfather and husband? Dum, dum, dum. Ooh. I'm going to let you take that first, Miss Lauren, because I technically don't have experience in this. When I met my now wife number 2, hopefully last one, no, she had no children. I was the one to bring children into the relationship, which that is similar to your experience. So, right? So maybe I'll let you take it from there. What do you think about the transition from boyfriend to stepdaddy and husband?
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm curious to know, like, from what perspective they're asking. I'm curious, like, are they the new boyfriend who's becoming the stepfather, or are they watching the new boyfriend become their kid's new stepfather? So I guess that if they end up commenting some clarification, just like raise your hand so I can get that from you. But as a stepmother, I can at least definitely speak to the perspective of kind of what it was like for me, becoming being the girlfriend and transitioning into that role. I would have to know more about the situation because there's so many aspects to it. And I've seen the full gambit. Like, I've seen really honest to God good guys who they're really not trying to like step on any toes. They have respect for the child's father, and so that's a transition, you kind of don't mind seeing. My husband, he has always respected how much his ex's new partner has done for her and his son. So, he's always supported that relationship and that transition, for example. There's healthy ways of it, but at the same time, if you're asking from a perspective of like, he's coming into this new role and he thinks that means it gives him more authority, how do I humble him? That's also another a lot of people face, is the overstepping.
Yeah, Jeff, who asked the question, he is actually the stepdad to be. So he is the one that is stepping into this role. So, oh, Jeff, buddy, you're in for a whole new world of fun. I mean, it's a different hat you're wearing for sure to go from boyfriend, the most beloved, very much focus of this woman's attention. Number one, that's one aspect of one way of looking at it. To now you're in the machine of the family. Welcome to the family. Now you're a what do you call it? Like a spoke or a hub in the wheel, and we all have our role here. And it's going to be, if you're like most, definitely a little rocky at first, trying to find your place. I mean, depends on the ages of the kids and their temperament and so forth. We've always heard the whole, "You're not my dad," as they slam the door and run into the room in an angry, fit or whatever. And I'm going to go stay with dad. I don't like you anymore. And you have some things working against you. There are some stats, for example, that show like abuse and so forth tends to happen. If there's abuse in a household, the first thing the police ask is like, is there a stepdad involved or is there a boyfriend involved? And then they always look to you. Like, so right off the bat, in a lot of people's mind, you're the suspicious one. Like, well, we got to watch out for this guy, the new stepdad. So you have that working against you. But you had something else you wanted to share, Lauren.
I wanted to say, if you ever do get the "you're not my real dad" thing, I had this down ages ago because that was one of the first things my mom brought up. Like, what are you gonna do if he ever says like, "You're not my real mom"? Easy answer. Your teachers aren't your real mom. A police officer isn't your real mom. Your manager at your job is not going to be your real mom, probably. You're going to have to listen to people who are not your real mom. Sorry.
I'm still the adult here. This is still my home. I'm still I have an air of authority here. You know, I've been around the block a few times, kiddo. I'm not trying to be mean, but I'm just telling you, yes, pick up your clothes. You know, we all have roles here in this family. We all have jobs we need to do. It has nothing to do with mom or dad or whatever. I was really blessed, very lucky in that, but it's kind of sad at the same time when my now wife Natalie, who was a girlfriend at the time, came into the picture. As after we had dated, just over a year, I introduced him to the kiddos, and my kiddos at the time were so starved for a maternal figure that they just welcomed her like immediately. Like, yes, we love her right away. Natalie's the best thing ever, and my daughter became very, very attached to her. My youngest son at the time, who was he was be about 3 at the time, was just on her hip just immediately. So they just like immediately she became mommy. There was no transition. There was no like, we're not sure about this woman. They're just immediately like, yes, we love her. And so it was great, but also, again, at the same time, a little sad to see that these kids were so love starved for a woman figure in their life that they would just jump on this stranger like that. But it was good, and it's remained positive since then. She's still very, very close to them. My daughter is now 21 years of age and in college, and they talk all the time, and professional advice and relationship advice. And my oldest boy's going to college next year, talking to him about stuff. So it's worked out well, and it can do well. But there's just, for most I've seen, there's a little bit of a hiccup there, a little bit of a stage of transition, I guess you could say, that's perfectly normal. And it could go a little sideways. And I think, Jeff, always have in the back pocket, there's always like professional help out there. This isn't anything new. You could go to a therapist or some kind of family therapist that could help you with the transition and bring kiddos in. Let's all talk and do this the right way. Make sure if there's problems. If not, there's no need to, what's the word I'm looking for? Upset the apple cart or whatever it is, just for the purpose of checking, going to therapy. You don't necessarily need to do that, but if there's problems, then sure, why not? This one says, let's see, and make sure I'm not missing something. Lauren, unreconstructed Carl, that's a name. Lauren, love your content and streams. I'm a stepfather currently in the middle of a very adversarial co-parenting situation. Do you have any general advice on that? And then he follows up to say, I have one stepdaughter, and I have known her since she was 18 months. She's now 5. The dude has narcissistic traits, I assume the father, and constantly bitches out my wife on the court-ordered app. The courts don't seem to care. He seems unstable. I feel like I have to walk on eggshells when it comes to any kind of discipline. I know this isn't much context. That's pretty good context. You've set the tone here pretty well. You got a kind of a dysfunctional past partner there that's making things a little difficult for you, and you're like, and the new guy slid in there, and you're like, this is a little uncomfortable. So, Lauren, got any advice in that?
Yeah, but I have a 2-point piece of advice. So, first thing that you're going to have to kind of make peace with, and once you do make peace with this, it's going to make your job right now a lot easier. But one of the most frustrating parts about being the step parent in an adversarial co-parenting relationship is that you're never going to be the one in the ring. You are always the coach on the sidelines who is responsible for rubbing their shoulders, putting the ice pack on their back, making them chase chickens, and then you send them off into the ring. And there's nothing you can do at that point. If they give up and stop fighting and come back, you can't stop it. If they get knocked out, you can't stop it. So the best thing that you can do is just be the strongest force in their corner, right? And so what you can do is, you're not in there in our family wizard having these conversations, but you can teach her about the gray rock method. Okay? It sounds like this dude just likes to yap and hear himself talk, and what he wants so bad is your wife's reaction, because that keeps him in control of your wife and he is relishing in it. So, what I want you to teach your wife to do, you guys are going to get in this together, is teach her the power of just, okay, or the kids will see you at 6. Only information that is like need to know. It's going to take all the life out of him. It's going to just crush his spirit. Let me tell you, when I finally learned that and taught my husband about it, we went from these like miles long paragraph emails of like this and that and nitpick and nitpick. And once it was just a simple response, it wasn't fun anymore. So it stopped.
That is so typical. And this is, tell guys the same thing. This isn't a gendered thing. When you're dealing with somebody who's so irate and just wanting to pick a fight at all times, whether they're technically narcissistic or what the case may be, the grand solution is just to not play the game and just be like, okay, I mean, I would get the same thing, paragraph text messages, and I would just eventually get to the point where just like, I'll be there at 5 to get the kiddos,
Yeah.
not even acknowledging the 12 points she made of this is bad and I'm angry because you're just, oh, okay, there's nothing I can do here. This doesn't pertain to me whatsoever. This is just a person letting off steam. They're wanting to get a rise out of me, whatever. It's just, okay, see you at 5. Example I often give is like you're in a mediation in a divorce and you're trying to avoid going to the courts, trying to come to a solution, and you got your attorney and they have theirs, and you're sitting across the table and everything's going like business. And then finally the wife has a moment where she gets very emotional, ex-wife, and says like, I can't believe you're doing this. You're going to take me away from the kiddos. This isn't fair. I should have the kiddos all the time. And starts losing it. And instead of be like, okay, Mary, what can we, calm down. It's okay. What can we do to make this, I want to make this, good for both of us. You just sit there and listen and go, okay, moving on. Page 2, just let her get it out of her system and move on. It's a business negotiation. You can't get sucked into that emotionality of it. It doesn't help anyone, but that's a very common scenario. The gray rock is something we all need to learn. It's not necessarily dealing with a narc, as they say. It's just dealing with irate people, hyper emotional people. Just keep it business. See you at 5 o'clock, kiddos, done. And then Ryan says, much respect to the step parents. Not an easy job. And Unreconstructed Carl says that, Lauren, you just described that dude to a T. I was like, yeah, there's one thing I've learned. I've mentioned it numerous times in my videos. It's just how predictable and how similar we all are and where I was first introduced to this concept was when my ex-wife, this is 12 years ago, left me, and I had a therapist who said, I need you to talk to this Steve dude. He's another client of mine. He wants to talk to you. Your stories are very similar. Here's his number. So we talked on the phone, and this guy was completing my sentences for me. Oh, let me guess. This happened. Let me guess. She said this. And I'm just like, how'd you know this? You got like a camera in my, he's like, dude, go online and stuff. All the stories are the same. He introduced me to this whole online community of guys going through the same thing and yada, yada, and all this other stuff. And it's just an example, exhibit number 922,000 of, wow, we're just so similar. We have this little programming within us and everything else. And one of those things is, you deal with these types of people, you don't. You just sidestep them and go around them. It's the crazy homeless guy on the street losing his mind. You just go right around him, and you don't stop and engage with the guy, So, yeah, and thank you, Jeff, for it says, keep up the great work. Love you both. Well, we love you, Jeff. And let me see if there's anything else we missed. Any other questions, ladies and germs? Oh, I know one thing we can talk about. You recently had a big happening in your family with your stepson, the teenage stepson. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So we have finally come to an end in our personal family court battle. It's finally over, and like most happy endings for a father in a family court battle, it's so bittersweet in a lot of ways, because it's like we finally got what we wanted. Like we finally secured real time with our kid. He's turning 16 in 2 weeks. It took us 2 years away from him being a legal adult, while living half a mile away from him for 10 years, to have the basic right to have him spend the night on a school night and take him to school the next day. 16 years my husband has not been allowed to have him on a school night. No fault, no allegations ever made against him. No, he doesn't drink, no drugs found in his system, not, has a roof above the kid's head, consistent living, child support is paid, still relegated every other weekend for 16 years. But what changed it, and obviously I can't recommend this for every case, a lot of the time it wouldn't even work in every case, but what made this case different is that my stepson actually went in himself and wrote a letter to the judge, and he wrote it during school. He had his English teacher sign it to prove that he wrote it from, in his words, an unbiased location. And he told the judge, like, I'm, really unhappy not being able to spend sufficient quality time with my dad. There are some weeks that, because of all my extracurriculars, I only see him for an hour, and I'm simply requesting, a fair amount of time with my father. And he also expressed, quite frankly, I think it's ridiculous that it's come to this. And it wasn't easy. At first, we were put before a circuit court judge, which, I don't know if you know how circuit courts work, but it's the idea of, the cases are put on a circuit. And so they throw in referees who have not actually practiced that form of law, but they're given that case to make sweeping, broad, life-changing decisions for a family after just hearing their story for 15 minutes, and then they go back to not ever practicing that form of law ever again. Like, it's ridiculous. So we were put forth in front of a referee, and the other lawyer was arguing that we wanted a change in custody. Now, we were not asking for anything crazy. We were asking for, we already had every other weekend. So we said, what if we do Thursday overnights, Sunday overnights, and we make the summers week on, week off? That's not taking over half or even close to half. That is approximately roughly what, like, we're looking at maybe 8 to 10 overnights. That's a third of each month. But this referee was like, "Oh no, you're trying to get a change in custody, you sneaky snakes. I'm gonna throw this out." So we could have just been like, "Okay, we lost," but we appealed, and it was put in front of an actual judge who's actually been practicing family law for several years, and he looked over and he was like, "This is not a change in custody, in fact, and I do want to hear from the boy." And the lawyer was like, "No, they plagiarized that letter. They bribed him to write that letter. You got to just throw that whole thing out. We got to just throw out this whole case." And the judge was like, "No, I want to hear it." So, we're leading up to the date. There was like, I think they call it a show cause hearing, to like really prove it's not a custody case, and in that meeting, the lawyers talked to try to maybe settle, and we were told that the mom said only if the world was ending would she ever consider giving the child more time with his dad. We were told that. This is in court transcripts. But up did not want to have to actually hear her son go to court and say out loud that that's really what he wanted. So she settled. And we went from only if the world was ending to an actually decent schedule. And it only took, what's the craziest part about the whole thing is, a year ago, my husband emails her and he offered even less. He didn't even suggest week on, week off summers. I think it was just the Thursdays and Sundays. Would have been way less. And he says, "Hey, like, we as parents, we could agree to this outside of the court. And like, if you want, we can still have a lawyer look it over. I'll pay for the lawyer for both of us. And I promise I won't try to lower child support. I just want him to have that extra time that he's asking for." And it was ignored. It was completely disregarded. And then a year later and thousands of dollars from each of us later, what does she do? Agrees to more time than we even asked for in the first place.
I mean, how many times have we heard these situations? It's ridiculous. It's basically, when it boils down to, you got like this two-pronged problem. One is that obviously she has a personal vendetta or something really against ex-hubby, that she's going to make things as difficult as humanly possible.
Never married. There's a rumors on Reddit that I like was the affair and made their marriage end. Never married.
Okay, well, that's an added wrinkle in the whole thing then. So, I was going to say, and the other spoke to this is it fair to say that the whole reason you had this problem with the custody, like if we were to hold a gun to the head of the judge, or, okay, terrible analogy, terrible visual, but you know what I mean. If we forced them to say, why was this so difficult? Is the answer basically because she's woman, he's man, we default to woman? Is that basically it?
What's really wild is if we were to like actually look at all the court paperwork, there's never like a really strong case against my husband. There is no, he's unfit, he can't handle it, nothing like that. The argument is that, well, she's the unmarried mother, and unmarried mothers retain natural guardianship and primary physical custody, and there's not a good enough reason to take that away from her. The argument was always, well, she's not unfit enough for you to share equal custody.
So, is it fair to say if they would have been married, would your husband have had a better case?
Yeah, it's something my husband has even said. He's like, sometimes I wish I would have married her just so I could have had more time with my son.
Wow, how effed up. Well, does anybody have something similar to share in the comments? Have you guys had something similar to that? I thankfully didn't have that. My split when we divorced was 50-50 on paper, but I ended up having the kids most of the time for several years there at the beginning. Now we're very strictly 50-50. So I didn't have to deal with that, thank goodness. I can't imagine going to that and spending all that money in time to try and fight what is just such a duh thing, like, yeah, that's his dad. Go to dad, right?
Yes. Hello. It's just crazy too, because when I met him, he was an everyday dad. I'm talking, I have emails to prove that her herself saying like, yes, you get him every day after school, and then you get him again on Sundays. It was an every single day thing. And then mysteriously, when she's told I'm serious about someone, it's actually just Tuesdays during the day. And oops, did I sign him up for an all-day choir camp on that very Tuesday? Whoopsie. Slipped my mind that's
Not to get too personal with this, and it's none of my business or anyone's business, but just trying to paint a picture of this. Had she moved on to a new partner?
It was a very interesting timeline. It was like as soon as he told her about me, a boyfriend that she had love feelings for, like very strong feelings, just like came out of nowhere. And mysteriously, even though I was not allowed to be around the child until I met her, and she didn't want to meet me, her words, he got to spend the night in the same room that they shared during the school week.
Wow. Well, this is just fairness all around, isn't it? Wow. So really, I mean, if we try to super simplify it, it just boils down to woman. Woman has a lot more rights, I guess we could say, privilege in all of this, and we default to her. Why? Woman. Why not dad? Not married. He's a guy. It's just, he's a second-class citizen when it comes to all this, and you have to fight for what is basically very normal rights, we would think, and that's sad. It's unfortunate. And I was just talking to one of the guys on our team here at Help for Men about his situation, and he was just like, my ex owes me so much in child support because he has the kids full time. He hasn't seen a penny of it. And he's like, you better believe if that were me, I would have been in jail a long time ago. He's like, but the courts are very blunt about, she's having a tough time. Single gal, she's now jobless, yada, yada. We'll give her some leeway to get back on her feet and everything. It's like, what the heck? And really, it boils down to, and his attorney's like, she's the woman in this. They get a little bit more leeway when it comes to that kind of stuff. As sexist and horrible as that sounds, that's the system we have to deal with in a lot of parts of the country. And that's another thing that makes this extra difficult is we're talking to this guy in Mississippi. We'll have a totally different experience than the guy in New York City and then the guy in California. It's all over the place. I had an example. I've told this several times in video. My ex, this was back when right after we divorced, we had, unfortunately, let this be a lesson to you people out there. If you have student loans in both your different names, don't combine them. Consolidate, that's the word. Don't consolidate your loans. The loan people will come to you and say, this was back then, this was 20 some odd years ago. Consolidate or even farther than that, consolidate your loans, get the super low rate, lock it in now. So we did. And then divorce. And then it's like, well, technically, if we look at payments made, my loan, which was very small compared to hers, was paid off. So she agreed to that. So you, wife, are in charge of the student loan, paying it off. You, ex-wife. Okay, part of the divorce agreement. I'll make the monthly payments for the student loan. That's in both our names still. We can't move it over to her name. It's still in mine. So please pay it so my credit's not hurt. Well, she didn't pay it. So I had to go to an attorney and say, she's not paying it. I texted. She says, yes, I know I will. And she hasn't. And my credit's going down and I keep getting these letters in the mail. And they're like, well, we will write a nasty letter, from us, letterhead saying, please do this. And we will garnish your wages and we will do all this other stuff and yada, yada. And she says, by the way, what's the situation with the kiddos? And I was like, well, I have them like 75% of the time. You're due child support if that's the case, right? You have every right to request that from the court. And then the lawyer says, well, hold on a second. Before I say that, let me see your paperwork. And I was like, why? She goes, I want to see who was the judge on your case. I was like, I don't remember. She's like, Judge Smith. Oh, yeah, you're in good shape. She likes dads. So, yeah, you'd probably get child support then. I was like, she likes dads? I thought this was a law thing, like ones and zeros. What does it matter subjectively if a no, it's who you have as a judge means everything. That was my first inclination of, oh, wow, this could have gone like this very easily for me, just based on who I had as a judge. I thought that is interesting.
That was our exact experience, actually. The way that the lawyers talked about different judges was very shocking, and it is very crazy to kind of what you were describing, where there's such an empathy gap with how the dads versus the moms are treated. Like, this is very interesting in our area. There is a woman in my life who is struggling a little bit, and she was telling me that she was trying to find housing, and she was told that if she lies and says that she's an alcoholic, that there is housing for alcoholic women. So she was able to just get in free room and board. She's got a couple roommates, maybe not on the nicest side of town, but but by by cosplaying alcoholism. A man lying about being an alcoholic.
That's a first. I've not heard that one. Wow. There's so many little goofy things like that just make you go, what the hell? The system obviously is broken. The problem is that we have 50 different states with 50, not even 50 different systems. What county are you in within that state? Who's your judge on your case? The whole thing is just a mess, and a subjective mess. And I don't know what the grand solution to all this. It's kind of analogous to our healthcare system, not to get political or anything, but it's also a bit of a mess. My wife is a medical doctor. She'll tell you, like, oh my God, billing and all of this stuff, it's a mess. Depends on what state you're in. And a grand solution to all of it is, I don't know, what do you think a grand solution is to all of this, Mr. Advocate?
There's definitely a lot of reform. A lot of reform. We just keep looking at it through analytical lenses and going like, okay, this whole jailing people for unpaid child support, that's got to go. We're not collecting any more child support when we jail people. We have been proving this for like 17 years straight. Let's just get rid of that. We'll probably collect more child support the less dads are in jail. Doesn't that make sense? Like, we can pick this apart, but it is true that in its current shape right now, the family court system is literally a gamble. It reminds me so much of like a blackjack table or any of these card games at the casinos where there are some rules, and if you know the rules, your odds of, getting a better play are higher. But at the end of the day, it's so luck of the draw. Like, if you get a bad hand, if you get the wrong judge, if your lawyer doesn't feel like actually giving a shit, like, all of those things are going to play into whether or not you have a viable relationship with your child or not.
Sad, so sad. And when we say reform, that's kind of a big, all-encompassing term. Where does that begin? I'm just little Ralphie sitting here in my basement office, and I want to do reform. Damn it, where do I start?
So I would say where you have to start is you have to understand that you can't do it alone. You have to start looking at, like, where are these fathers groups? Dad starting over, that looks like one place to start getting a community of men's only support for recently divorced dads. I can take care of myself mentally here. Oh, what's this? The pro se dads group, where you can learn pro se litigation to take care of yourself. Okay, I can start learning some legal jargon for free right here. And at that point, once you start getting these pieces together, that's where you start looking up. Let's say my favorite is Americans for Equal Shared Parenting. This is the group led by the amazing and great Mark Ludwig and many other heavy hitters, who Mark, has an entire book that is so comprehensive and even easy to understand, of, like, step by step, literally how to write and pass a law. And I guess the quickest way that I could explain how you do it is you look at laws that already exist. So let's say 50-50 shared parenting successfully passed in Arkansas, and then immediately passed, okay, not immediately, but in the span of legal terms, it was only like a couple of years later. So that's pretty fast. But then again, in Missouri, and Missouri took the legislation from Arkansas, and then they just kind of follow the step-by-step list of how to pass a law. You talk to the legislators, you organize a group of people, and then at that point you have to start submitting it. But you need much more than one person, because you can't play all of the roles. There are the people who are good at talking to the legislators, and those people might not be the same people who are good at drafting the legislation, and those might not be the same people who are good at the back end organization. So it takes a massive village.
Yeah, no kidding. So it's like a two-pronged approach we're talking about here. One is you need to know how to navigate the system as is. So you need people like in your back pocket to say, no, no, dude, don't do that. You want to do this. No, don't say that. You want to do, don't spend this money, spend it here instead. You dress this way in court, getting little silly things like that. So we need like an advocate to help us in that regard. And then we have the much bigger task of changing laws, changing legislatures. So it's not unfair. That's where the real, oh, wow, that's where you need a lot of help. That's where the Mark Ludwig and so forth, those types come in. So it's not an easy task. But I'll tell you, one thing we're seeing, though, is that we are seeing more states default to 50-50 custody being in the default judgment right off the bat, unless there's extenuating circumstances. That's hard to say. So that's a positive. I went to Wikipedia here recently and did a search for what states are, and it's like a pretty good list that are 50-50 now. I was surprised. Like, wow. So it's getting better.
It definitely is getting better. That is one thing I'm happy that we are stressing, because when you're in the trenches of it, like when you're in situations like my husband's, where you're asking for very basic things and being told, like, oh, but that's not what mom wants, like, it's really hard to believe that anyone is on your side. But it is true. People are starting to see that, like, well, wait, women are just as much in the workforce. So if you both are working full time, why would you get primary sole custody?
I was just going to say that's a big driver of all of this, is that women are now working more than ever, making more money than ever. And so when it's, it used to be, I think, a big part of the default decision, well, kids go with mom, is maybe mom is under or unemployed, works from home, dad give the child support, the alimony. She has more time to devote to caring for the children than dad, who's working 50, 60 hours a week. Duh. But now it's like mom's also working 50, 60 hours a week. Mom is also not going on work trips. Mom is also going to meetings, on weekends and so forth. And so, now you don't have that much of a case anymore. So now we're starting to see the scales tip more to the default 50-50. I think that's one part of the big reason why. And Eric says, Eric, is part of our group, and Eric is an attorney. And Eric says, "Congrats, Advocate, on the big win." And Eric, here, I'll give Eric will like this. He'll probably say, "Whoa, dude, it's a little early." But we have two Erics on our team who are attorneys in Help for Men. They're both members of our group. And we're going to put together a video course for men, how to best prepare for the whole process of divorce. Like a multiple part. Here's what to do, here's what not to do, and so forth. Staying out of the legal advice. This is, attorneys aren't allowed to give legal advice, but just very basics of how to best prepare you, how to stay away from those big mistakes, those common misconceptions, the myths involved in divorce and all of that. So we're going to get started on working on that soon. And Eric is one of the attorneys that's going to be involved in that. So welcome, Eric. Good to see you here. Make sure I've missed all kinds of comments here as we were just blabbing away. That's what happens. Ryan says, people have to remember as a step parent that they are kind of volunteering to enter the storm, kind of like a first responder. Yeah, you're often, not always, but you're often jumping into what's kind of a dysfunctional kind of thing. Like we had the gentleman here earlier said his wife had a year and a half old and so forth. It's like, oh, that shows that something was up there. And so voila, the man, is very mentally unhealthy. It's like, well, who saw that coming? Not unusual in that regard. So yeah, you got your work cut out for you. Carl says, our 5-year-old has expressed that she prefers their house. She loves being with her mom and says that dad's house is dirty. He has 50-50, no child support since he is willingly unemployed and lives off the money he made selling houses that he inherited. Well, really making a case for this dude. He runs a communal Airbnb out of his house. So that's obvious safety concern. So yeah, the guy's building up a resume for why maybe kids shouldn't go to him. And yet you see that, so it's kind of exhibit A for it's not always a gendered thing. He has a legal right to have those kiddos over there, and you're sitting there going like, this isn't in the best interest of the kids. This is a nightmare for them, and the kids want to be with us more, and so it's not so simple. Ryan says, I lose respect for mothers that keep kids away from the fathers. What's in the kids' best interest is what is best for the kids. My ex-wife threatens me all the time to take time away from me just because she wants more child support. Oof. The judge really favors him, and his mom paid his legal fees and turned the whole thing into a huge money pit. Oof. We both work full-time, and he just hangs out. He's in Florida, by the way. Carl, the dude right underneath you there, Mr. Eric, is also in Florida. And a family law practitioner. So I don't know. Eric, maybe a client for you there, buddy. He says, I feel like our lawyer at the time is just milking us for cash. Yeah, that happens. We hear that often from both sides. You had something to share.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like it's a really common problem that people are always asking, like from both sides. Like, how do I get my ex to work? Like, I think that's a really common question with the child support formula, the way that it is, because it's both couples' incomes combined with how much time, not even time, just overnights, not even hours, each parent spends with the other one. And so it's important that we get those numbers right and correct. And it can be really frustrating when someone is saying, oh, well, I just don't work. You have the ex-wife who's like, well, I married a guy who's happy to provide for me. I don't need to work. I'm going to just have babies with him and raise those babies and be a stay-at-home mom. Or, you have the ex-husband who is like, well, I have enough to live off of from selling houses, so I don't work, so I don't have any income to give to you. And I think what any lawyer would tell those people is, for better or for worse, this is where you can impute an income. So if your ex-wife wants to say, well, I'm at home raising the kids, or the ex-husband wants to say, well, I'm at home living off the houses I sold. Okay, then let's look up how much a nanny makes. Let's look up how much a realtor makes. And then we'll just put in what you should be making. A lot of lawyers will be happy to do that. And it can get scary sometimes if, let's say you just happen to become unemployed. Then it's the two-sided coin, like the double-edged sword of, this is a great tool for getting people who refuse to work to pay their fair share, have at least that child support calculated to the fair share. Because it doesn't necessarily mean you'll pay, it just means you might get less, which, hey, them's the ropes. But it can be frustrating if, you just happen to be unemployed and they're like, well, you used to be a concrete site manager. So we're going to impute your income as a concrete site manager. And you're like, I can't get a manager job. What are you talking about?
There was a famous comedian, and you were in the comedy world. I'm trying to remember his name. He was on the popular show. I think it was back in the '90s called News Radio. Dave Foley. Dave Foley. I don't know if you know. Yeah, he's Canadian, and he famously was on Joe Rogan's podcast back when Joe Rogan was very first starting. He was like one of his first guests. I think you can probably still find it on YouTube. I'm not sure. But he talked all about his experience of being married to a woman who had borderline personality disorder, and then divorced him, took the kids, and basically sued him for all kinds of child support and alimony and everything else. And the monthly amount was astronomical. And it was based on his former earnings when he was big into the network television show, which he wasn't at the time of the divorce. He was a touring comedian, and he just had little gigs here and there. He wasn't making his big money he was making before. But I remember, I'm trying to remember the exact words, but basically the judgment said, it's not about how much money you're making now. That has nothing to do with what you are obligated to pay her every month. It's based on what we think you're able to make, basically. You've shown us you can. You've shown us you can do it before, so do it again. And he's like, eh. And if I remember right, I think old Dave skipped town and left the country, left Canada, and basically abandoned his kids and the ex-wife and everything, and moved to the States and was open about it. Like that was his situation. I can never return to Canada because I owe all these bazillions of dollars to the ex-wife. I can't afford it, and it is what it is. I haven't looked into it. It's been years since I heard his story. I wonder if that's been resolved since then, or if there's any legal repercussions for being so open about it like that. But he was, so it's not an unusual circumstance.
Yeah, they call it. And like I said, I think an imputed income is fair if it's like baseline entry level job imputation. Like, just basically, like, I think it would be fair to maybe calculate it even at unemployment, whatever they would give you. But yeah, I don't like the whole potential income thing of like, well, this is how much you could be earning. It's like, okay, but we can't operate on hopefuls and maybes.
Yeah, and of course, you want the kid to be taken care of. Ideally, on paper, it's I'm giving her this money so that we can better care for our child when they're with mom or with dad or whoever it is. But when you start seeing these stories of these L.A. Hollywood people giving 60 grand a month to somebody for child support, and you're like, what? And it all comes down to, well, because they have a lifestyle that they have to maintain. They used to live this way in this big house with these 10 cars, and they're not about to give that up just because of divorce. So they have every right to maintain. That's where you go, okay, now we're being a little silly. And I think that was Dave Foley's example there. She was accustomed to a certain way of life. And he's like, I can't afford that anymore. It's like, well, too bad, so sad. That's ridiculous. And I hope those little things change as we move on. I know 99.99% of us will never even come close to something like having to pay somebody 60 grand a month in child support, but it happens apparently, and it's illustrative of a bigger issue, that's for sure. I'm looking to see if we're missing anything else here. I don't think so. Before we wrap her up, did you have anything else to share, Miss Lauren?
I was just going to say, the whole argument that child support should be calculated in order to keep both lifestyles of the homes equal. That is just so preposterous to me because like how much do we parse hairs here? Like, oh, well, mom got a trampoline. Does that mean that dad's house needs a trampoline? Like mom has pizza Fridays. Does dad's house have to have pizza Fridays? Like how equal do both homes really need to be? And at that point, like, are we admitting that a child's entire childhood is materialistically defined? That's insane.
Yeah, it's a little slippery slope there. It doesn't stand up to scrutiny when as soon as you scratch the surface, you're like, wait a minute. The more you think about this makes zero sense. And you're right, the whole tit for tat thing, it's like, it's ridiculous. But again, I can see the point of we want these kids to be as comfortable as possible. We want them to have a good life. We don't want the kids to say, you go to mom's, now you're punished and living in poverty. But again, that doesn't necessarily mean we have to give the woman 50 grand or whatever a month. It's ridiculous. There has to be a happy middle ground there somewhere. But anything to promote, or one more time on Facebook, we want to search for, what should people search for to find the proper Dadvocate page?
It's just to the Dadvocate because they didn't keep my likeness or anything. They changed the page to be like story love or something. So if you like AI generated grandma titties, highly recommend that page.
I mean, who doesn't, right? I don't even know Okay, hold on. AI generated grandma titties? Is that what you said? That's a thing.
It's bonkers.
I had no idea that. I'm so naive. I didn't even know that was a world. AI generated grandma titties, as you said. My Lauren's words, not mine. So that's awesome. All right, so yeah, so check the Dadvocate. Look for the Dadvocate on Facebook, and Dad's starting over. Follow me on there. Help for Men. Check out the Help for Men YouTube channel. I'm reserving that just for interviews with folks. I don't know if you saw Lauren. I had an interview with Orion Taraban, Psychex guy. That was my first interview on Help for Men. That's doing pretty well. That's pretty, and he's exploding right now. He's all over the place. I don't know if you've seen him.
Oh snap! I don't know if I have. I gotta check this guy out. It kind of sounds vaguely familiar, so I'm like,
He was on. I don't know if you're familiar with Soft White Underbelly. It's a popular. He's been on there 3 or 4 times. Modern Wisdom, Diary of a CEO, and a bunch of other big time podcasts. He's been a guest on all of those, and I got him right before he really took off. And so yeah, so if you go to Help for Men on the Help for Men YouTube channel, you'll see my interview with Orion Taraban. So everybody check that out. And I have coming up next week, I am interviewing Dr. Robert Glover, author of No More Mr. Nice Guy. I've talked to him a couple of times for the Dad Starting Over podcast, but now I'll be on the Help for Men podcast and YouTube channel, and hoping to have a good chat with him. We've collaborated a couple of times on things. So keep him busy. Keep him busy. What's coming up here in the near future for Miss Lauren? Anything cool going on?
nothing. I would say in particular. I've always got new videos though coming out, so if you sub, you'll see them.
Always love the Davocate videos. Those are always my faves when they come up. I'm like, ooh, something cool. Oh, I love, by the way, your video making fun of the breakdancing chick. What's her name?
Ray gun.
Ray Gunn. Yeah, that was her. That's her street name, right? From Australia. Is that so? She's the, for guys that don't know, or guys and gals that don't know. We had the Olympics in Paris, and they had breakdancing, first time ever, right? As an event in the Olympics, which is kind of like really. But anywho, and this woman from Australia gets out there after seeing all these people spinning on their heads and doing flips and doing all this great acrobatic shit. This woman gets out there and starts convulsing like she has some kind of problem. I don't like something's seriously wrong. When I first saw it, I was like, well, this woman's a little not right. Like she slipped through the cracks, and this is not good. We need to like escort her off the stage. And it ended up being this whole thing. And you did a video on it, and it was perfect how we kind of dissected what a lunatic this woman was, and all the stuff going on behind the scenes. It was nuts.
Yeah, it gets so much deeper, I don't even know how I started, like, going down the rabbit hole or finding all this stuff out, but it was like, at first, everyone was just like, "Dude, why is she dancing like that? This is not break dancing. This is so weird." And then as I started finding out, it's like this woman basically studied an entire PhD. This is basically what happens is she meets this guy who's a break dancer. And like a lot of girls, she wants to impress this guy, so she decides to just fully take on his hobby as her hobby and decides like I'm going to become the master of this. Now she was already very academically minded, but she became like obsessed with this world of like, oh my god, I'm like the only girl in this scene of all these guys, like I'm going to become the biggest name out there. She writes an entire PhD thesis on deterritorializing gender in Sydney's breakdancing scene and how it's got all these masculinist impressions and influences, and they need more of a woman's touch. And so, what she presented at the Olympics was basically, in her mind, like this feminist monument of like she's going to change what breakdancing really looks like. And so she scores 0 points, but she's arguing to people. She's like, no, 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 I did get points. Look at the individual ratings. I did get points. Okay. Look at the individual ratings. You look at the individual ratings, and it's in creativity, individuality, and originality, which is like You made up your own thing.
Wow, that was nuts. That was hilarious. You did very well, and I liked her moves at the end. That was good too. I like that.
That's something I just happen to already know how to do. And it was like funny because when I was watching Raygun breakdance, it was the first time I'd ever watched the Olympics and said, I can do that.
I have an admission. I was a b-boy breakdancer from back in the day. I was in rural Indiana in grade school. Do you remember like? Well, you're younger than me, but like the movies that came out were like Breakin', Breakin' 2, Electric Boogaloo was the sequel to Breakin'. I don't know if you remember that. Ice-T was in there, and I was yeah. So I was all big into that world for several years. I was pretty good. So I know something of that world. And so when I watched that, I was like, okay, this is just wow. So I was so glad to see you tackle that. That was like, yes, thank God. So that was awesome. So check that out if you haven't already. That is Lauren the Dadvocate's take on Ray Gunn, the the breakdancing lunatic from the Olympics. Well, Miss Lauren, sorry about the audio mix-up here, guys. We're having the little CB thing. I can't talk and her at the same time. It is what it is, so that's why we're kind of cutting each other off here. But Miss Lauren, the Dadvocate, thank you so very much. Appreciate you. Appreciate all you do. And everyone, please go back to her Facebook page. Find the proper The Dadvocate page. You will see her picture there. And please follow, because if you missed the beginning of this, the page got hacked. She had to start a new one, et cetera, et cetera. It was a big mess, so we're starting over. She has 1/100th of the people that she had before, so let's get her numbers back up there. And follow her on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Threads, TikTok. Yay, can't forget that one. Miss Lauren, the Dadvocate. And me, Ralph, Dad Starting Over. Help for Men, helpformen.com. Check out the Help for Men channel on YouTube. And check out our private group that we call the HFM, stands for, see above my head here, Help for Men, the HFM Brotherhood. So you can go to helpformen.com, learn more about that in our group and all the cool, awesome benefits that come with it, and get some help from a bunch of dudes from all over the world, from U.S. all the way to Australia and everywhere in between. We got about 700 dudes in the group. So join us. And I think that's about it. So once again, thank you so much, Lauren. Appreciate you. And thank you guys for joining us today. And catch you on the next one. A toodaloo.